The Dominion had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for 12,000 years. They were an ancient species with silver-blue skin and eyes like polished black stones. Their warships were beautiful and deadly. Their tactics had been perfected through centuries of conquest. They believed they understood war better than any species in the known universe. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Supremacy. He watched as his fleet of 300 warships moved into position around a small blue planet called Earth. The planet was beautiful in its own primitive way. Oceans covered most of its surface. Green and brown landmasses dotted the blue. White clouds swirled in patterns across the atmosphere. The humans who lived on this world had been discovered only 40 years ago. Scouts had studied them carefully and sent back detailed reports. The humans were a primitive species. They fought among themselves with crude weapons. They had nuclear devices that they had actually used on their own kind. They had no unified government. Different nations competed and argued and sometimes killed each other over resources and ideas. They had only recently learned to travel beyond their own atmosphere. The scouts had concluded that humans would be easy to conquer. They would see the power of the fleet and surrender quickly. This was how it always happened. This was how civilized species behaved when faced with overwhelming force. Ambassador stood beside on the bridge. She was responsible for negotiating the terms of surrender once the humans accepted their defeat. Her silver eyes scanned the tactical display showing the positions of all 300 ships. "They have refused our terms," she said. Her voice carried a note of surprise. "They claim they will fight." Made a sound that passed for laughter among his kind. It was a clicking noise deep in his throat. "Let them try," he said. "They understand war better than any species in the galaxy. We have perfected the art of conquest. These humans know only chaos and destruction. They will learn." The way of war was elegant and refined. It followed ancient codes and traditions that had been developed over thousands of years. When two fleets met in battle, they would exchange fire from a distance. Ships would target engines and weapons systems. The goal was to disable, not destroy. Once one side gained a clear advantage, the losing commander would signal surrender. Terms would be negotiated. Prisoners would be treated with respect. Conquered worlds would become productive members of the Dominion. There was honor in this system. There was structure and predictability. War was terrible, but it did not have to be savage. They believed they had civilized warfare itself. Looked at the tactical display and felt confident. 300 warships against a species that had never fought beyond their own atmosphere. The humans had no fleet. They had a few orbital stations and some small vessels designed for exploration. This would be over quickly. On Earth, the ultimatum arrived at military headquarters at 6 in the morning. Captain Daniel Hayes received the message in the command center of Sentinel Prime, humanity's primary orbital defense station. He read the terms carefully. Surrender unconditionally. Accept rule. Become subjects of the Dominion. Refuse and face complete destruction. Daniel was 38 years old. He had served in the United Earth Defense Force for 15 years. He had trained for a moment like this, though he had never truly believed it would come. Aliens were supposed to be a distant threat, something for future generations to worry about. Now 300 warships hung in space above his world, and he had to make a decision. He looked around the command center at his crew. Lieutenant Amy Martin sat at the tactical station. She was young, barely 25, with sharp eyes and steady hands. Commander Jack stood nearby. He was the executive officer, a veteran who had served with Daniel for 8 years. Chief Engineer Sam Butler monitored the station's systems from his console. He was a quiet man who preferred machines to people but was brilliant at keeping things running. "What do we have?" Daniel asked. Jack checked his display and his face was grim. "We have exactly one operational warship, the USS Defiance. She finished her final trials yesterday. She was supposed to have another month of testing before deployment." "One ship against 300, Amy said quietly. Daniel studied the holographic display showing the alien fleet. The vessels were elegant, curved like silver fish swimming through the darkness of space. They moved in perfect formation, each ship knowing exactly where it belonged. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. "Get me Admiral Kate," Daniel ordered, "and send a message to the Defiance. Tell Captain to prepare for immediate launch." The connection to Earth took only seconds. Admiral Kate's face appeared on the screen. She was 72 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen more combat than anyone else alive. She had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity ever knew aliens existed. Now she commanded all of Earth's defenses from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. "Captain Hayes," she said, "I assume you've seen the alien ultimatum." "Yes, Admiral, they want us to surrender." Kate nodded slowly. "I've been reading everything we know about their wars are formal, almost ceremonial. 2 fleets meet, exchange fire until one side's position becomes untenable, and then terms are negotiated. They follow strict rules. They expect everyone else to follow those same rules. And if we don't follow their rules—" Kate smiled, and there was something hard and cold in that smile. "They've never encountered a species like us. They've never fought someone willing to do whatever it takes to survive. They think war is a game with agreed-upon boundaries. They don't understand what we are." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He had studied human history. He knew what his species was capable of when pushed to the edge: world wars that killed millions, weapons designed to end civilization itself, atrocities committed in the name of survival and victory. Humans were not elegant warriors. They were survivors, and survivors did not follow rules. "The Defiance is our only real weapon," Kate continued. "She's not pretty. She's not elegant like those ships, but she was built by humans for human warfare. She was designed to take punishment and keep fighting. She carries weapons that would horrify any civilized species." "You want us to fight," Daniel said. It was not a question. "I want us to survive," Kate replied. "And I want those aliens to understand exactly what kind of species they've decided to threaten. Prepare the Defiance for launch, Captain. We're going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget." Daniel ended the transmission and turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw determination. These were humans. They did not surrender easily. "You heard the Admiral," he said. "Contact the Defiance. Tell them to prepare for battle. And someone get me everything we have on ship weaknesses. If we're going to fight 300 warships with one, we need to be smart about it." The crew sprang into action. Consoles lit up with activity. Messages flew between stations. Somewhere in orbit, the USS Defiance began powering up her weapons. High Commander watched from his flagship and waited for the humans to surrender. He was certain they would see reason. No primitive species could stand against the Dominion. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Admiral Kate sat in her command bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens surrounded her, showing feeds from satellites and stations across the solar system. The fleet hung in orbit like a silver noose around Earth's neck. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a city, and humanity had one ship to stop them. Lieutenant, her aide, rushed in with a tablet. He was young, nervous, and very good at his job. "Admiral, they've destroyed 3 of our orbital stations. Minimal casualties. They seem to be targeting infrastructure only." Kate nodded slowly. She had expected this. "They're showing us what they can do. They want to frighten us into submission without actually killing too many people. It's how they operate." She had spent the last 40 years preparing for this moment. Ever since the first scouts were detected, humanity had been secretly building its defenses. Most people on Earth didn't know how close they had come to discovery multiple times. Most people didn't know about the Defiance. The USS Defiance was not like other ships. She was humanity's answer to a simple question. What if we have to fight an enemy with overwhelming numbers? The answer had shaped every aspect of her design. She was built to survive. She was built to hurt anything that attacked her. She was built by a species that had spent its entire history finding ways to kill each other. Kate pulled up the ship's specifications on her screen. The Defiance was angular and ugly, covered in layers of armor that would have seemed excessive to any other species. She carried that fired tungsten slugs at incredible speeds. She had nuclear missiles designed to detonate in patterns that maximized destruction. Her point defense systems were not meant to disable attackers, but to obliterate them completely. And deep in her belly, she carried humanity's last desperate gamble. A weapon so terrible that the scientists who built it had simply called it the Hammer. "The Defiance is ready for launch," reported. Kate picked up her communication device. "Captain Daniel Hayes." "Admiral," his voice was calm despite everything. "You understand what I'm asking you to do." There was a pause. Kate could imagine him looking around at his crew, at the people who would follow him into impossible odds. "Yes, Admiral, my crew understands. We know what's at stake." "The Think War is a game with rules," Kate said. "They've never fought someone willing to break every rule to survive. They've never faced humans. Show them what that means." On the Defiance, Captain Daniel Hayes walked through the corridors of his ship. The walls were thick with pipes and cables and emergency systems. Nothing was hidden for the sake of appearance. Every inch of space was used for something practical. The ship hummed with power as her reactors came online. He stopped to speak with his crew as he walked. These were the people who would fight beside him. These were the people who might die beside him. Ensign Lisa Park sat at the navigation station. She was 23 years old, brilliant with numbers and terrified. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "You ready?" he asked. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "I've run the calculations 100 times, Captain. I know what we're facing, but I'm ready." He nodded and moved on. Chief Petty Officer Ben Torres worked in engineering. He was 52 years old and had served 30 years in the Navy before transferring to the space program. His hands were from decades of working with machines. "How are the engines?" Daniel asked. Ben grunted. "She'll run. She's not happy about being rushed into service, but she'll run. I'll keep her together, Captain. You just worry about the fighting." Dr. Nancy Cole was preparing the medical bay. She was arranging supplies and checking equipment with the efficiency of someone who expected to be very busy soon. She didn't say anything when Daniel looked in. She just met his eyes and nodded once. Daniel reached the bridge and settled into his command chair. The screens around him showed the fleet in perfect formation. 300 ships, thousands of weapons, millions of aliens who had never known defeat. "Captain," Amy Martin said from the tactical station, "they are hailing us. They want to establish rules of engagement." Daniel almost laughed. Rules of engagement. The aliens wanted to set rules for how they would fight. It was so strange, so foreign to human thinking. In human warfare, the only rule was to win. "Put them through," he ordered. High Commander's face appeared on the screen. He was tall and angular, with silver-blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light of his bridge. His black eyes studied Daniel with curiosity. "Human Commander," said through the translation system, "I offer you a chance to surrender with honor. Your vessel is impressive for a primitive species, but you cannot defeat 300 warships. Agree to terms, and your crew will be treated fairly. Your planet will become a productive member of the Dominion." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "What happens if we refuse?" "Then we will disable your ship and take your crew by force. But there is no need for such unpleasantness. Surrender is not shameful. This is how civilized species resolve conflict." Daniel looked at his crew. Amy at tactical, her fingers hovering over the weapon's controls. Jack, his executive officer, standing ready. Lisa at navigation, Ben's voice coming through from engineering, Nancy waiting in the medical bay. All of them knew what was coming. All of them had chosen to be here. He looked back at Let me tell you something about humans, Daniel said. We're not civilized. We never have been. Our entire history is written in blood. We've fought wars that killed millions of our own kind. We've invented weapons capable of ending all life on our planet, and we've come close to using them more than once. His expression changed. Something that might have been confusion crossed his alien features. You think you understand war because you've practiced it for 12,000 years, Daniel continued. But you've been playing games. You've been following rules that everyone agrees to. We don't follow rules. We don't play games. We survive. That's all we do. We survive at any cost. He leaned back in his chair. You want to know what human warfare looks like? You're about to find out. He cut the transmission. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Jack spoke. That was quite a speech, Captain. Daniel smiled grimly. I meant every word. All hands, battle stations, power up all weapons, navigation, plot and intercept course. Sir, Lisa said, her voice shaking slightly, you want us to fly toward them. That's exactly what I want. They expect us to keep our distance. They expect us to exchange fire according to their rules. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to get close and hit them with everything we have. Amy's fingers danced across her console. All weapons online, charged, missiles armed. Engineering reports ready, Jack added. Daniel took a deep breath. This was it. One ship against an empire. Impossible odds. But humans had faced impossible odds before. They had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. They had crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. They would not kneel to anyone. All hands, Daniel announced. This is the captain. We are about to engage a fleet of 300 enemy warships. The odds are against us. The math says we should lose, but we are human. We don't care about math. We don't care about odds. We care about survival. We care about our homes and our families and our world. Today we show the galaxy what that means. He paused. Engage engines, take us in. The USS Defiance surged forward toward the alien fleet. They watched with confusion as the single human ship accelerated toward them instead of retreating. They did not understand what was happening. They would learn. The fleet advanced in perfect formation. Their ships moved like a school of silver fish, each vessel knowing exactly where it belonged. High Commander watched from the bridge of the eternal supremacy as the human ship approached. They are accelerating toward us, Ambassador said. There was confusion in her voice. Why would they do that? Studied the tactical display. The human ship was small compared to his warships. It was ugly, angular, covered in strange protrusions that his sensors identified as weapons. Lots and lots of weapons. Perhaps they hope to ram us, he said. A desperate act. Increase power to forward shields and prepare to disable them. The way of war was precise. Ships would engage at a distance, targeting engines and weapon systems. The goal was always to disable, never to destroy unnecessarily. Once a ship was crippled, its crew would surrender and be treated according to the ancient codes. This was how civilized species fought. Ordered his weapons powered to 30%, enough to disable the human ship without destroying it completely. He still hoped to take prisoners, to learn more about this strange species that refused to surrender. The human ship did not slow down. It came at them like a predator, accelerating beyond what would have thought possible for such a small vessel. Its course was not cautious or defensive. It was heading directly into the heart of the formation. They're going to collide with us, gasped. Then the human ship opened fire. The first shots were not aimed at engines or weapon systems. They were not designed to disable. Tungsten slugs traveling at incredible speeds tore through 3 ships simultaneously. The elegant silver vessels crumpled like paper. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space. Nuclear missiles followed. They detonated in clusters, creating walls of fire and radiation that caught more ships before they could react. The precise formation of the fleet shattered as captains tried to evade the destruction. 12 ships were destroyed in the first 90 seconds. Stared at his display in shock. 12 ships. In 90 seconds. The Dominion had not lost 12 ships in the last century of warfare. This was not possible. This was not how war was supposed to work. "Return fire," he commanded, his voice cracking. "Full power, destroy that ship." The weapons struck the human vessel. Energy beams that should have burned through any hull. Missiles that should have crippled any engine. The attacks hit the ugly, angular ship and splashed against its armor like water against stone. The human ship kept coming. On the bridge of the USS Defiance, alarms screamed and lights flashed red. Damage reports flooded in from every section. 3 hull breaches, 2 offline, casualties in sections 7 through 9. Captain Daniel Hayes gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship shook from another impact. Damage report. Commander Jack checked his console. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "We've lost 24 crew. Hull integrity at 70%, but all primary systems are still operational." 24 dead in minutes. Daniel felt the weight of those deaths pressing down on him, but he could not stop now. Stopping meant losing. Losing meant the death of everyone on Earth. Navigation, bring us around. Tactical, target the nearest cluster of ships. Lieutenant Amy Martin worked her console with bloody fingers. A piece of debris had cut her hand, but she ignored the pain. Targeting solution locked. Fire. The Defiance unleashed another barrage. Tore through hulls. Missiles detonated among groups of ships that had clustered together for protection. The human weapons did not distinguish between vital systems and non-vital systems. They simply destroyed everything they touched. They had never seen anything like it. Their wars were elegant dances of precision and honor. This was butchery. This was chaos. This was human warfare. "They're retreating," Amy reported. "The enemy ships are pulling back to regroup." Daniel did not hesitate. "Follow them." "Sorry." "I said follow them. We're not here to defend. We're here to attack, chase them down." The Defiance pursued the fleeing ships. It was something no enemy had ever done before. In warfare, when an opponent retreated, you allowed them to regroup and negotiate. You did not hunt them like animals. The humans hunted them like animals. On the Eternal Supremacy, watched in horror as ship after ship went dark on his display. The human vessel moved through his fleet like a predator through a herd. It targeted engines so ships could not flee. It targeted weapons so ships could not fight back. It targeted life support so crews would be forced to abandon ship. When escape pods launched, the human ship ignored them and pressed on to the next target. It did not stop to collect prisoners. It did not pause to accept surrender. It simply kept killing. "This is barbarism," shouted into the command frequency. "They're not following any protocol. They're fighting to exterminate us." A young officer turned to with fear in his eyes. "High Commander, what do we do? Our tactics don't work against them. Every strategy we try, they simply ignore." Felt something he had never experienced in his 300 years of warfare. He felt fear. Real, primal fear of an enemy that did not think like he did, that did not fight like he did, that seemed willing to die as long as it could take him with it. "All ships," he ordered, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Coordinate fire on that vessel. Everything we have. Destroy it completely." 120 ships converged on the Defiance. Their combined firepower was enormous. Enough to crack a small moon. Enough to vaporize any ship in the Dominion fleet. The Defiance took the hits. Her armor blackened and melted. Sections of her hull tore away and tumbled into space. More alarms screamed. More crew members died at their stations. But she did not stop. Captain Daniel Hayes looked at the damage reports. Half his crew was dead. The ship was falling apart around him. Any other commander would have surrendered. Any other species would have accepted defeat. But Daniel was human, and humans did not surrender. "Engineering," he said into his communicator, "prepare the hammer." Sam Butler's voice came back, strained with exhaustion and pain. "Captain, the power systems are failing. If we fire the hammer now, there's a good chance the energy feedback will destroy us." "What's the percentage?" A pause. 30% chance of total destruction. Daniel looked around his bridge. Amy Martin was still at her station despite the blood running down her face. Jack had taken over for a dead officer at the communications console. Lisa Park was plotting courses through the chaos with shaking hands. They were all exhausted. They were all wounded. They were all still fighting. "We knew the risks when we launched," Daniel said. "Prepare the hammer." "Understood, Captain. Charging now." The fleet continued its assault. They could see the human ship was dying. They could see the hull breaches and the explosions and the debris. Victory seemed close. Just a little more and this nightmare would be over. They did not know what was coming. In the heart of the Defiance, power systems that had never been tested in combat began to charge. Reactors that were already strained pushed beyond their limits. The ship groaned and shuddered as forces built up inside her. Daniel watched the power readings climb, 30%, 50%, 70%. "All hands," he announced. "Brace for hammer deployment, this might be rough." Amy looked at him with tired eyes. "Captain, if this doesn't work, it's been an honor." Daniel nodded. "The honor is mine, all of you. It's been an honor." The power readings hit 100%. "Fire," Daniel ordered. And the Defiance lit up like a newborn star. The hammer was humanity's answer to an impossible question. How do you defeat an enemy that outnumbers you 100-1? How do you win when every calculation says you should lose? The scientists who built it had worked in secret for decades. They had taken theories that most physicists said were impossible and made them real. The weapon worked by bending gravity itself. It created a wave of distortion that expanded outward at nearly the speed of light. Anything caught in that wave would be crushed by forces beyond imagination. Ships would crumple like empty cans. Metal would fold and twist and compress until nothing recognizable remained. It was terrible. It was brutal. It was exactly what humans needed. When the Defiance fired the hammer, the universe seemed to pause. A sphere of distorted space expanded from the wounded human ship. It moved so fast that the sensors barely registered it before the effect reached them. High Commander was watching his tactical display when the ship started vanishing. One moment they were there, bright points of light representing his fleet. The next moment they were gone, not destroyed in the traditional sense, not exploding or burning, simply compressed into nothing. "What is happening?" he demanded. His officers had no answer. They stared at their screens in disbelief as ship after ship disappeared. The elegant silver vessels of the Dominion, ships that had conquered dozens of worlds, crumpled and collapsed like paper in a crushing fist. 118 ships ceased to exist in 3 seconds. Ambassador screamed. It was a sound of pure terror, something had never heard from any in his long life. She stared at the display where more than a third of their fleet had simply stopped being. "What kind of weapon was that?" she whispered when she could speak again. Had no answer. He had seen weapons that burned and weapons that exploded and weapons that tore through armor. He had never seen anything that simply erased ships from existence. He had never imagined such a thing was possible. The remaining ships scattered in blind panic. The perfect formation that had surrounded Earth broke apart as captains fled in every direction. Some tried to jump to hyperspace. Some simply accelerated away as fast as their engines could carry them. All discipline, all training, all the thousands of years of military tradition vanished in an instant of primal fear. The Defiance drifted in the center of the chaos. The weapon had taken everything she had. Her engines were dead. Her weapons were offline. Emergency power flickered through damaged systems. Life support was failing in section after section. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Hayes tried to move and felt pain shoot through his entire body. Something was broken, maybe several somethings. He looked down and saw blood soaking his uniform. He wasn't sure if it was his own or from the officers who had died beside him. "Status report," he croaked. Commander Jack pulled himself up from the floor. His left eye was gone, destroyed when his console exploded. Blood ran down his face, but he was alive. "Sir, we're dead in space. Engines offline. Weapons offline. Life support failing. Casualty reports are still coming in, but we've lost at least 60% of the crew." 60%. More than half the people who had launched with him were dead. Daniel felt the weight of those deaths pressing down on him. All those lives, all those families who would never see their loved ones again. But they had one. "Communications," Daniel said. "Can we still transmit?" Jack checked the damaged console. "I think so, barely." "Open a channel, all frequencies." The transmission system crackled to life. Daniel took a breath that hurt his broken ribs and began to speak. "Fleet, this is Captain Daniel Hayes of the USS Defiance. You came here thinking you understood war. You thought your 12,000 years of conquest meant you knew how to fight." He coughed and tasted blood but kept going. "But you've only ever fought species who played by your rules. You've only ever fought people who surrendered when the odds turned against them. Humans don't play by rules. We fight to survive. We fight until there's nothing left. We build weapons that would terrify gods, and we use them without hesitation. On the eternal supremacy, listen to the human's words. His fleet was in chaos. His officers were shouting and crying and trying to restore order. But he stood still and listened to the voice of the man who had just destroyed more ships than had been lost in 500 years. "This is your one warning," Daniel continued. "Leave our system. Leave and never come back. If you ever return, if you ever threaten our world again, we won't just stop you. We'll find your colonies, and we'll show you what total war really means." The transmission ended. Stood in silence. Around him, his remaining officers slowly regained their composure. They looked to him for guidance, for orders, for some sign of what to do next. "High Commander," his weapons officer said, "the human ship is helpless. We could destroy it now and continue the invasion." Looked at the tactical display. The Defiance was indeed helpless. She was venting atmosphere and leaking radiation. Her crew was dying. One concentrated attack from his remaining ships would finish her. But had seen what humans could do. He had watched one single ship, destroy over half his fleet. He had seen a weapon that bent the laws of physics themselves. And he had heard the promise in Daniel Hayes's voice. Not a threat, a promise. "If you come back, we will destroy everything you love." He believed that promise. "No," said quietly, "we will not attack." "But High Commander." "I said no." His voice was sharp. "That ship killed 170 ships today, one ship, and I heard something in that human's voice. He meant what he said. If we kill him, if we continue this invasion, they will come for us. Not with one ship, but with hundreds. Not with one hammer, but with 1,000 weapons we cannot imagine." He turned to face his bridge crew. "We are leaving. Signal all ships. We are retreating to Dominion space." Ambassador stared at him. "The Council will never accept this. We have never retreated from a conquest." "Then the Council can come here and fight the humans themselves," replied. "I will not spend more lives against that species. Not today, not ever." On Earth, Admiral Kate watched the fleet regroup and begin moving away from the planet. She had expected them to attack the crippled Defiance. She had expected more death, more destruction, perhaps the loss of everything. Instead, the aliens were retreating. "Get rescue ships to the Defiance," she ordered. "Now, and someone get me a communication line to Captain Hayes if he's still alive." Lieutenant worked his console. "I'm getting a weak signal, Admiral. The captain is alive, but barely. Medical teams are standing by." Kate closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of relief. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. One ship had held off an entire invasion fleet. The fleet jumped to hyperspace and vanished from Earth's sensors. The sky that had been filled with enemy ships was suddenly empty. Humanity had won its first interstellar war. But Kate knew this was just the beginning. They would return, or others would come. The galaxy now knew that humans existed, and humans knew that the galaxy was not friendly. They would need more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. They would need to become the thing that other species feared. And looking at the smoking ruin of the Defiance, still broadcasting her defiant signal, Kate knew that humans were very good at becoming what they needed to be. 6 months had passed since the battle. High Commander stood before the Council of Elders in the great chamber on the room was ancient, built thousands of years ago when the Dominion first began its expansion across the stars. The walls were carved with the names of conquered worlds and victorious commanders. His name would not be added to those walls. He had lost. For the first time in history, a fleet had retreated from a primitive species. The elders sat in a semicircle before him. Their silver-blue skin was pale with age, their black eyes hard with judgment. Elder, the oldest of them all, spoke first. "Tell us again what happened at Earth." Had told this story many times already. Each telling was painful, but he did not hesitate. "We arrived with 300 warships. The humans had one vessel. We expected them to surrender according to tradition. They did not. Their single ship attacked our fleet directly, using weapons we had never seen before. They did not target engines or weapon systems. They targeted everything. They fought to destroy, not to disable." He paused, remembering the horror of those moments. "When we concentrated our fire on their ship, they deployed a weapon that our understanding of physics. 118 ships were destroyed in 3 seconds. The rest of our fleet scattered. We retreated." The chamber was silent. The elders looked at each other with expressions that could not read. "You lost 173 ships," Elder said slowly, "to one enemy vessel." "Yes, Elder." "And you believe we should not attempt another conquest?" Straightened his back. "I believe we should not try. I have studied human history since returning. They are not like other species. They have been at war with themselves for their entire existence. They developed weapons of mass destruction while they were still learning basic science. They have concepts we don't even have words for." He looked at each elder in turn. "Total war, scorched earth, mutually assured destruction. These are human ideas. They are willing to destroy everything, including themselves, rather than accept defeat. They would rather die than surrender." Another elder spoke. "Surely they can be conquered with enough force. We could send 1,000 ships." "And they would build new weapons to destroy those ships," replied. "The weapon they used against us was invented in secret over 40 years. They have had 6 months since the battle. I do not want to know what they have built in that time." The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they made a decision that had never been made in history. They sued for peace. Ambassador traveled to Earth to negotiate the treaty. She was nervous in a way she had never been before. The had always negotiated from positions of strength, accepting the surrender of lesser species. Now she was asking a primitive species to accept peace. The negotiations took place in the rebuilt United Earth headquarters. The building was new, constructed quickly to replace the one damaged during the invasion. Humans moved around her with busy purpose. They did not seem afraid of her or impressed by her. They simply treated her as another person with business to conduct. Admiral Kate led the human delegation. Captain Daniel Hayes sat beside her, his arm still in a healing device. The battle had nearly killed him. His doctors said he would never fully recover from his injuries, but he had insisted on being present for this moment. Around him sat the survivors of the Defiance, 37 crew members out of the original complement of 112. Commander Jack wore a patch over his missing eye. Lieutenant Amy Martin had scars on her hands that would never fade. Ensign Lisa Park looked older than her 23 years. They had all been given medals and promotions. They were heroes to their entire species, but they did not act like heroes. They acted like survivors. They had seen things that would haunt them forever. "I still don't fully understand," said when the formal negotiations were complete. "Your ship was nearly destroyed. Most of your crew died. How did you know you would win?" Daniel looked at her with tired eyes. "We didn't know we would win, but we knew we wouldn't lose. There's a difference." Tilted her head, confused by this statement. Admiral Kate leaned forward. "The fight to conquer," she explained. "You accept surrender because continuing to fight would be wasteful, but humans don't fight to conquer. We fight to survive. And when survival is the only option, surrender becomes impossible." She paused to let her words sink in. Even if the Defiance had been destroyed, even if Earth had been occupied, humans would have kept fighting. Guerrilla warfare, sabotage, resistance, for decades, for centuries if necessary, until either we were free or completely extinct. Tried to understand this. They would never fight a war they could not win. When defeat was certain, they surrendered and accepted terms. It was logical, it was civilized. But the humans did not think that way. "Your elegant wars work because everyone plays by the same rules," Kate continued. "But we come from a world where the rules change constantly, where the weak defeat the strong through determination and creativity and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. You weren't fighting a species, Ambassador. You were fighting an idea, and you can't kill an idea." Daniel spoke quietly. "We're willing to be your friends now, your allies, your partners in whatever future we build together. But remember this. If you ever try to make us your subjects again, we will find your colonies, and we will show you what happens when you push humans too far." He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stated facts, and believed every word. "We will honor the peace treaty," she said finally, "and perhaps we can learn from each other." Kate nodded. "Perhaps, but understand what you're dealing with. We're not proud of what we are. We're not happy that we had to develop weapons like the hammer. We would rather live in peace with the galaxy, but if peace is not possible, we will fight. And we will win, whatever the cost." The treaty was signed that day. The Dominion recognized human space as sovereign territory. Trade agreements were established. Cultural exchanges began. The galaxy started to adjust to the presence of this new species. High Commander stood at the observation window of the Eternal Supremacy as the fleet prepared to return home. He looked back at the small blue planet that had humbled an empire. A primitive species, his scouts had said 40 years ago. No understanding of proper warfare. Thought about the hammer. He thought about the humans' willingness to sacrifice themselves. He thought about their history of endless wars and their capacity for violence that seemed to have no limit. "No understanding of proper warfare," he repeated quietly to himself. "No, they understand it perfectly, better than we ever did. We just never realized that our version of warfare was the aberration, not theirs." The fleet jumped to hyperspace and vanished from Earth's sensors. In the months and years that followed, word spread across the galaxy. A new species had emerged. A species that did not play by the rules. A species that would fight to the last individual rather than accept defeat. A species that built weapons terrible enough to reshape the stars. Other empires took note. Some were curious. Some were afraid. Some were foolish enough to think they could succeed where they had failed. They would all learn the same lesson eventually. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same. The crew of the Defiance returned to their families. Some retired from service. Others continued to serve, training the next generation of human warriors. Their names were taught in schools. Their battle was studied in military academies across Earth. And in the darkness between stars, other ships were being built. Ships with human crews and human weapons and human determination. Ships that would carry the warning that had begun with the Defiance. Do not threaten humanity. Do not underestimate humanity. And never ever make humanity fight for survival. Because humans had spent their entire history learning how to survive, and they were very, very good at it.